All right, lots to cover today. Let's start with the outside. Check out the south elevation of this house. We have now the siding installed, the gutters installed, and the scaffolding's out of the way. Let's have a closer look. So check this out. The upper portion of the house, clad in hardy plank, is all completed now. There's a couple of pieces left over, but that can be easily reached by ladder. But for the majority of the work, when we had our planks going right across the side of the house, it made it very easy for the workers to access the top, especially the gutter guys. They didn't have to bring ladders across. I mean, this is a narrower lot, so having ladders in this area will be a bit more cramped. But because we have planks across, everything is made very accessible. Now we have the entire upper part done. When the stucco guys come and do the lower part, it's actually quite accessible for them just with regular 2x4 scaffolding. So where do the ladder jacks go? We moved it to the other side. So if you walk along the side of this house, everything's very accessible still, and we can easily take this small scaffolding down in time, whereas the other setup is more useful over there, and that can remain in place until that side of the work is done. So let's head over to the other side and see the progress over there. So here in the north side of the house, you can see that all the comfort board and the rain screens are completed, and all the flashings are done, ready for the siding guys to go up there and clad it with hardy plank. Now this makes it for a very convenient setup because this scaffolding system only needs to be moved once, rather than setting it up there one side, passing all your inspections, coming on this side and redoing all your siding work. Well, in this case, we actually sequence it in a different manner, where we finish everything on that side, call for a partial rain screen inspection, leaving this side undone. We continue the cladding on that side until it's finished, then moving over to this side and starting our rain screen, and then calling for another partial, getting the okay, and then starting the cladding work. That way, everything moves only once. You don't have to fumble with this large scaffolding unit, and it makes the work more pleasant and more accessible for everybody. As you can see on the top there, we can now put the gutters on the top side here as well, without the gutter guys bringing in their tall ladders and perhaps not getting the angle of reach, because this is actually a lot narrower property than standard properties. So I'm happy to say we've reached a big milestone. We've passed all of our trade inspections, so sprinklers, plumbing, electrical, low voltage, gas, everything's passed. On to the next inspection, which is framing inspection, which we've also passed. So framing inspection allows us to proceed with the insulation of the interior of the house. And from there, we start drywalling and finishing. That's why at this stage, it's very important to verify everything that's done up to date. So in this video, I want to cover a couple of things that the inspectors would look for when it comes to framing inspection. Fire stopping. Any penetrations going from the walls into the upper roof areas should all be fire stopped. But notice here we have two different kinds. We have a fire caulking, and we also have put Roxol. Okay. Stuff all the penetration, all the holes full of this material, and you should be good to stop from any fire from going from inside the wall areas, or potential fires, going from inside the wall areas up into the roof areas where you don't want that to spread. Okay. Another example of fire stopping is down here. All the penetrations through the lower floors, all fire stopped. Okay. Drop ceilings. Anytime we have a drop ceiling, it's good practice to start off with a starter strip of drywall. Right? That way the drywall carries the continuity of that right to the top ceiling, so you don't have a gap in between. So in this case, we have a 2x4 drop, which is much lower than the top plate. However, when it comes to here, where we don't have any gaps, it's okay to put a full piece of framing material for a drop, as long as you don't leave a gap where fire can go up and reach inside the ceiling space. But it's always good practice to sleeve it out first, and then put your drop ceiling. This is where your drywall can continue down without having any kind of gaps opened up in those areas. Something that plumbing inspectors look for, they look for backing now. They didn't used to look for this before, but now they want backing alongside one side of the shower or the bathtubs, basically for grab bar installation. So for aging in place clients, this is where they would install grab bars in the future for accessibility. We spoke about this in one of the very early videos about keeping the insulated wall away from the rough-in walls. In this case, where we have the washroom utilities against the outside wall, we built an extra wall in front of it, leaving the continuity of the poly separate. This way, you don't have to worry about all the wires and pipes penetrating through this poly. You might see oftentimes on some job sites where the poly is tuck taped all around all these rough-ins and the electrical boxes and the wires sticking out. That's not really the greatest way of doing things. If you have a separate wall, it's actually much cleaner for the rough-ins. However, it does shrink your room space by about 4 inches, so keep that in mind. But in terms of the work, this is a much better way of doing things. Something for the builders, this is a custom tub. No damage because we protected everything. We have iso board on the top of the tub. We have iso board lining the top side of the custom shower. That way, when trades come in here to do the next round of work, you don't have to worry about them damaging all the finished materials. Another tip for the builders, when you want to preserve the quality and integrity of the windows and you have no way of delivering drywall through the stairs, good practice to create a frame around the windows. This way, when they deliver drywall from the outside, they don't have to crush your window sills and crush all your window frames. This way, the drywall can slide straight in, slide over top with 2x4s without damaging all your nice window finishes. So one of the features of this house, we have the trimless door detail, whereby there's no casings installed at the doors. So to achieve that, one of the ways we can do it very effectively and inexpensively is to install the doors into the frame ahead of the time before you put the drywall in. Now this takes a little bit of work. Normally the door jambs come a little bit thicker, standard 4.5 inch. You want to order them ripped down to about 3.5 minimum, but as you order 3 5/8 in case some of the lumber is not perfectly straight or it comes on the bows. So 3 5/8 allow you to have a little bit of a tolerance sticking proud of the wall. Now for shear walls, take into account the extra 1/2 inch, so this would be a 4 5/8 jam. But how we would finish this is, just pretend this is your drywall. You'll cover the drywall up to a 1/4 inch like this, showing a reveal, right? And this continues all the way to the end. This has an L edge here to finish it off. Gives you a nice casingless door finish. But in order to do that, you have to organize it so that the doors are installed during this stage. And of course, you'll only see the jam here because we've taken the doors off. We've stored them safely on site. We've packaged them up so when trades come in, they don't trample all over it because we won't be using the doors for another 1.5, 2 months from after the installation starts. So good time to put these doors in if you want to have a casingless door detail. Anytime you have pipes on the exterior wall, you want to make sure that you at least put in iso board in the backside to maintain some kind of insulation value. This is a high density insulation versus the bat, which is a low density. So this makes up for the loss of the thickness of the pipe at least. Of course, you'll top this off with more insulation to keep this area warmer because this is considered the exterior part of the interior wall. This is also a good time to prepare for all your future towel bar locations. Anywhere above the 42 inches height area or so is where you typically will put a towel bar. In this case, you have tons of backing anywhere you want to put that towel bar without having to guess where the actual stud is. On the topic of backing, for your handrails, it's good to have blocking between all the studs. In our case, we have a shear wall, so it doesn't matter. We have plenty of backing, but we don't put a nice 2x4 or 2x6 along here where your first handrail mount is installed. You want to make sure when you ever have a large opening like this and you plan on installing electronic blinds, you want to make sure the top side here has adequate backing because this width of a roller shade can be extremely heavy. So make sure you have adequate backing, otherwise you may risk the roller shade from dropping. Because this house has a separate basement suite, it's very important to pay attention to the fire separation of the suite and the primary use area. In this case, starting off with a door, make sure it's a 45-minute rated assembly. For this door, you have weather stripping, it'll have a self-closer, have a bottom sill. The door will also have to be rated itself. Usually you'll see the tag on the door jamb and also on the door edge. For the area separating the legal suite and the primary, you have to make sure there's lots of fire stopping in between. See all the red caulking up there? That represents areas that are fire stop. All penetrations going through to the other side must be fire stopped properly. In this case, we use Hilti CP 606. It's a fire rated material, and that is a 5/8 Type X drywall that's been installed in those cavities. The wall and floor assemblies separating the legal suite and the primary residence will be spec'd for sound bars. Okay? These are 1/2 inch sound bars that go between the TGIs and the drywall finish. So in this case, you'll space them out every 16 or as per spec, and then the drywall mounts on top. We talked about sleeving earlier. This is an example of how we sleeve everything. So this HRV unit is mounted on the underside of that ceiling. However, you have to maintain the continuity and the fire rating of that ceiling assembly. So how you do that is by having all these things installed ahead of time. So the soundbar first, followed by one layer of 5/8 Type X, then the machine installs underneath it. Now, once all this is passed, the rough-in is passed, you can continue that ceiling over here all the way across to the edges of the room, thereby maintaining the continuity of that fire rating for the floor assembly. If you did not do that, this machine would have been installed straight onto the TGIs, and you have a break in that fire rating. So therefore, it will not be a fire rated floor. In this case, we continue everything, and once this is finished, all these areas will be seeing drop ceilings built around it. but only over top of 5/8 Type X drywall. One last thing is, when it comes to front door entrances or any kind of exterior entrances, you want to make sure you want to put the blocking, okay, to the side of the jamb. For this case, we have a much larger door, and it's got adequate blocking here already, but they want to make sure you have a blocking here is to stop the door from being pried open. So I'm sure there's tons of other items that inspectors look for, but I just gave you the most low-hanging fruit, the most obvious ones. Fire stopping, anything to do with fire and safety, and just general backing areas. Verify all your work before the installation covers everything and makes it no longer accessible. And one good tip is to take pictures of everything that's been done to date. So you keep a file and a record of it. In case you need to change something, you'll know kind of where the wires are. And if you want to go one step further, do a Matterport of your entire house. So 3D images your entire house in a file. You can actually search it from the ceilings down to the ground with one click of a mouse without having to check separate pictures. So as we approach the next stage, which is insulation, one of the things I like to do before is I like to do AeroBarrier at this stage. Now, to prepare for this, it's a little bit different for this house than other houses because we have a spray foam ceiling and spray foam joist ends. Everything's pretty much airtight at those areas already. We don't have any bad insulation on the roof area, so that doesn't need us to prepare those areas, but you want to make sure your rod and caulk for your windows are done. You want to make sure all the windows and doors are lockable and operational. And if you do AeroBarrier at this stage, it gets into all the cracks and the gaps at the plane of the sheathing. So imagine all the areas here that you could access now, whereas you could not access later on. But in our case, we'll be doing 2 applications of AeroBarrier, which is a superior way of doing it. And it'll get right into these cracks. Anytime we miss something at that stage and the poly gets installed and drywall gets installed, we can always catch it again post drywall. So next episode, look forward to the AeroBarrier application. So now it's time to close up the house. We've passed all the rain screen inspections, which allows us to button it up from the outside. We passed our framing inspection, which allows us to do insulation from the inside, followed by an insulation inspection, and then drywall. So then we'll have about 4 to 6 weeks of time where we start finishing the inside of the house. And this is a good time to prepare for your finishes, make all your finishing schedules, order all your materials, and plan for the trades that come in to start decorating the insides of the house.